The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings, or art, or any other media derived from them. I'm Jeff Haecker, and joining me today on the panel are Thomas Salerno. Hey, Thomas.
Hey there, Jeff.
And as a special guest for this one, artist Alix Murray. Hi, Alix.
Hello, Jeff. Hello, Thomas. Good to see you.
Good to see you. All right, be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. And you can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on X, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget that you can get your own official Secrets of Middle-earth merch, including our awesome t-shirt, at sqpn.com/merch. And just to give you a little description, because that ties into the episode here, it shows the 4 main free peoples of Middle-earth. I believe it's a man, wizard, hobbit, elf, and dwarf. Actually 5, I guess. It shows them with the Hail Mary and the Tingwar script. So that is a great way for you to support the show and show your love for Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. And that description leads us into today's topic. We know that Tolkien is one of the greatest writers of all time. However, today we're going to be talking about Tolkien as an artist. Since this is an audio podcast, we will include links to his art where possible in the show notes, and I will try to share everything on the Discord when this episode is published. So, all right. So before we kind of talk about his art in the Legendarium, in the course of research, I just kind of saw that he was taught by his mother from an early age, and he was actually very talented as a child in painting and sketching. I don't know if Alix, you or Thomas, you've ever kind of looked at any of his art or anything from that time, but similar to his writing kind of being inspired by his mother's, because I believe his mother also had a love of language and stories as well. So he was very inspired by his mother. So I don't know if either of you have kind of looked at any of that art of that time period in his life.
I haven't seen so much of the artwork, but what struck me when we went to there was an exhibit in 2018, I believe, of Tolkien's artwork at the Bodleian in Oxford. And so my family and I think along with the rest of the country, went down to see this exhibit. And I was actually quite shocked and impressed by the calligraphy and his handwriting as a child, and his mother's handwriting. So she used or wrote with a style that's known as the insular minuscule, which is what you would see in texts like, or manuscripts like the Book of Kells, these early Celtic and medieval Gospels. And his handwriting as a child was quite beautiful, which makes me, I always think about this. Children are so much more capable than we give them credit for. And this is a perfect example of a child that was given all kinds of opportunities to perfect his talents, including his handwriting.
And speaking of his handwriting, it brings to my mind his famous, I don't know what you call that thing, his little symbol for himself that incorporates all of his initials.
Yes.
Including new research shows the letter P, which is hidden in there for his confirmation name, Philip.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So the letter P is actually hidden in there. There's the JRRT that everyone's familiar with. And I first came across that news in some of the work Dr. Holly Ordway has done. I don't think she made the discovery, someone else did, but she was talking about it in her book, Tolkien's Faith. So I like that he just created this little, monogram for himself that everyone over the world is familiar with.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm trying to look in I'm gonna have to look at this monogram now to see if I can find the P. J. Well, yeah, I can see it's part of the. You could use. You have the J, R, R, and the R's are one on either side with the leg of the R's kicking out. But then if you just look at the R that's facing to the right and you eliminate the leg kicking out, it's a P.
Right, because there's also that little foot that comes out near the
which would make it
J,
which would make it a fourth letter. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
So like a lot of the stuff he does with handwriting is really beautiful, whether it's this or the Tengwar script, or his dwarf runes, on the inside of the Hobbit, like the inside covers of the Hobbit with all his maps and the covered in dwarf runes and stuff. That's probably the first place I encountered his art was in the pages of the Hobbit.
I think that's probably where most people have encountered his artwork because, of course, literally the jacket, the cover of the jacket cover of the book is his artwork. And and one of the things that struck me, and I apologize, please just talk over me if you need to, because I'm really going to nerd out today. Sorry. One of the things that comes out in all of his artwork from when he was quite young until, obviously when he was an adult, he really was a master of colors. He really was. He didn't, kind of flood it with 17 different kinds of colors where the eye is just, can't focus on anything. But if you think about the cover of The Hobbit, I think there are maybe 4 or 5 colors in that whole composition. And yet it's so beautifully done. It's so harmonious. And he does that throughout all of his artwork. There's a harmony. Nothing's too much. Nothing's too little. It's like his writings.
So what you're saying is that he is not John Ronald of many colors.
No, he's not.
Colors.
No, he's not. And sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was are you talking about the Hobbiton across the water painting? Hobbiton.
No.
No, I think she's talking about the painting of the Lonely Mountain that's on the jacket of the hardback.
Yes,
The Hobbit.
yes. But I know which one you're talking about when they're going down the river.
Yeah,
that one is exquisite.
Talk about later too.
Okay, yeah. Well, we won't get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. And then so we'll definitely get into more details as we go, I think. Before we kind of get into the specifics of various works, Alex, did you have anything else on the techniques or anything just overall before we kind of get into the specifics of some art of his?
One of the things that I thought was really wonderful, and this to me was an indication of how confident he was with his art, is he used multiple materials when he was making a single painting or picture. So he would use, he would use crayons and soft leaded pencils, colored pencils, watercolor, ink, calligraphy pens. He used all of those, in one painting to get that depth and texture and movement. And to me, that's what you do when you really understand the medium that you're working with, or the media that you're working with. And so he does that throughout. He seems predominantly to use watercolor, and he's so confident with it. In watercolor, Catherine, from my co-host of Secrets of Sacred Art, she really is very confident in watercolor. I always find if I use it, it just like if something's going to go badly, it's going to go bad. Like, what do I do? It just gets away from me and I kind of freak out and get frustrated. Whereas she really knows how to work with it. And in Tolkien, there's one specifically, I think from the letters to Father Christmas letters, where he uses this negative and positive space in a way with these watercolors that it's very, very impressive. So we'll come to that one. So that's all I have to say about that.
Awesome. Well, I think we can go ahead and jump right there. So before we kind of talk the legendarium, and we did a whole episode on the Father Christmas letters, like at the end, I think it was in 2023 in the December of that year. So definitely listen to that if you want more, but we wanted to kind of just focus on the art for a minute. And so of course the source I'm going to say is to get the book. I don't actually have a copy of it myself, but definitely it's a great book, for kids and adults. But a lot of this is also on the Tolkien Estate website, which is tolkienestate.com/painting. And we'll have a link to this. And there's a section called For Children, and that links to a lot of what's in the book, what's in the Father Christmas letters book. Because just as a quick refresher, these are letters that that Tolkien wrote to his children from Father Christmas, and when they were young, and he incorporated and drew and painted, or I don't know if he painted, but he drew art for these letters and like really made them up to look like they did come from Father Christmas. So definitely worth reading the book and checking that out. But we can go ahead and jump to that. And I'll turn. It's really just an open-ended discussion of anything y'all want to talk about relate with these. Favorite pictures or favorite things with these. Related to the art. So Alex, if you have, we were already kind of talking about it, so if you want to go ahead and move and kick us off on that.
So the Father Christmas letters, and I know people can't see this, but I do have a first edition Father Christmas letters that somebody brought into the bookshop where I work, and it never saw the shelves. It just it was like, now I'm bringing you home. But there's one, when I was talking about his use of positive and negative space, it is from the Christmas letter that he sent in 1932, and it's got the monogram NC, which is Nicholas Christmas, and at the bottom of it. But it's a picture of space, and if you look at this, it's got this inky black space, and it does kind of, in a way, it's almost like Space: The Final Frontier, but but the way he's done it, he has combined realistic like planets, but the stars are kind of these lovely 5-pointed and 8-pointed stars. So they're kind of, he's brought these abstract and realistic elements into this image. And I think he's done it in such a genius way. And it's the Earth. You can see the Earth and the moon. And I'm thinking, well, we've got a ringed planet at the lower left. I don't know if either one of you can see these images yourself. And I have to say,
it is on the Tolkien Estate painting.
Okay, excellent.
So
it is. And so you can see all of these different ways, that he's used just these dark inky colors, but he's diluted them a little bit. So there's a lot of movement. Some of the dark spaces are not as dark as other spaces. And then he's got just thousands of these little tiny pinpricks of lights for stars alongside all of the other stars. And I love this. And actually, really impressively, it's an accurate little map of the world. If you look closely at the Earth, you can see, he's into the details, and so like I said, it's his use of, so in other words, doing this, he didn't just like paint he clearly didn't just paint this piece of paper black and then added to it. You can see the movement of the ink going across the page. And the fact that he would do this for his children, this wasn't something that was meant to be on display. He wasn't doing this for anybody but his family. But the care and the skill that is put into this, I would argue his artwork is almost as finely skilled as his writings. I think they go hand in hand. I really do.
Yeah, it's a very simple style in a lot of ways. In this, and not in the sense of like it's simplistic, but just in the sense that it's because I love the big, I love fantasy stuff. I love the big epic stuff. I love like a lot of the art that subsequent artists have done on Tolkien, where really shows something like you might see on like a movie screen. But Tolkien's art, like it really just it's very simple, but it also evokes a lot of it. Just it's just very whimsical too. Like it and it's like you said, it's very he has a lot of the details here. I'm just looking at some of these pictures. The one from 1925, the letter, and this is again on the site, caught my eye, of the North Polar Bear like slipping off the roof of the house.
I like that one. I like the one where he falls down the central staircase of the house, and you can see all of the presents that he was carrying, like various stages of destruction up and down the staircase. And like Father Christmas is on top of the staircase, like, oh, like.
Oh yeah, like very slapstick as well.
Yes, yeah. I like.
I don't think that one's on the
sense
site
of
here.
humor in that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't see that one on this site, but that bear. What was his name? What was his name?
Oh, his
Corvu.
Real name. It was Finnish. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was Carvu or something. Yeah, Karhu.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, he was like that darn polar bear. He was so there's a lot of humor in his artwork as well.
And I love how in the letters he gives Father Christmas this spidery, almost shaky handwriting, as if he's like an elderly gentleman. Yeah. And then you have the big blocky runic handwriting of North Polar Bear, like coming in when Father Christmas will be like, North Polar Bear, never helps at all, and then you see just rot written by North Polar Bear, and then you'll have the little elf who helps them out, Ilberith, and his very nice, handwrite penmanship. So you get to know the characters through their penmanship.
Exactly.
Which I find just
and you even have the goblin. Like runes too in the book.
Oh, the goblin language.
Yeah. I think he wrote a letter in the goblin script, but then he waited 4 years before sending the key so you could read it. It's like, wow. So you have to go back and find that letter. Yeah. But
I love how he I forget, I don't know which year this was, but like he sent those cave paintings that Father Christmas and the bears discover underneath the North Pole, and they're clearly inspired by the famous cave paintings at Lascaux in southern France.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that, because they also remind me of, there's a Native American, I don't know what it is. And it's like in the back of my head. I'm never, I'll figure it out. Like if I ever actually find out how to look for it, I'll post it on Discord. But Thomas, do you know what I'm talking about? I know it's in a museum. I think it might be in the Smithsonian, but it's like this big hide. I don't know what animal it is, but it's decorated in these colors. And it's like some kind of ritualistic, I'm just going to call it a tapestry. It's not a tapestry. It's right. It's like a large piece of parchment, for lack of a better word, but it's like a tapestry. Do you know? Do either one of you know what I'm talking about? It's from the West.
I've seen
Southwest.
Similar.
I think.
I've seen similar things, and definitely some of the smaller figures resemble Native American rock art. That's been found in the American Southwest, like ancestral Puebloan or other.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Definitely the larger animals, like the mammoths and the reindeer and the horses, seem more inspired by the Magdalenian Ice Age cave.
Yeah.
So it's like he's combining like this new world Paleolithic art with old
the
world
old
Paleolithic art. Kind of like how the two continents come together at the North Pole. So maybe he's trying to say, oh, there was this ancestral civilization at the North Pole, which kind of inspired both, strains of art in the old world and the new world. Like, it's a neat bit of world building that he's incorporated. Is. Yeah,
it is. And I think also, again, thinking about just the limitation of colors here, but how he's used them and how he's spread the colors that it's basically the colors are the kind of the creamy parchment paper that they're drawn on. And you've got like a gray wash for some of the animals. Some of them are just white, like the background. And then you have quite a bright red and then a very strong black. Very simple palette. It's a very simple palette that he's using here, but the way he's used the palette, some of these animals are just one color. Some of them are two colors. Some of them are three colors, and they've just been beautifully balanced because that red is your eye is always going to go to red because we're predators by nature, so we like the red. That's why red is exciting to us. Oh wow, meat! But then he's just the way he's spread that out so beautifully, I think is amazing. And we're all kind of looking at these different slides. I don't know if there's a way that I could share these slides on Discord, but we'll see. But if you look at the top left-hand corner, you can actually see what to me looks like a very ancient. Or what would be a very ancient Viking ship with the dragon heads. Yeah.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, of course, there's a lot more we could talk about, and maybe in future episodes we'll do more deep dives into this. And just also looking at that section on the four children, like a lot of the captions, there's other stuff here too, not just the Father Christmas stuff, but a lot of it says is like he painted this for his children, so that just makes it even that more special that he wrote the letters for his children and did the Father Christmas paintings, but then like he wrote the stories for his children, and then he made a painting for his children. So definitely for his children. So all right, well, I think we could move on to really get into the Legendarium, kind of the art that he created for the Legendarium. And we just have a couple slides or a couple pictures to talk about. And again, we'll kind of note where these are linked. I don't know if you want to talk about the first painting you had on here about Alex, about the what was it, the entrance to Fairy, or the kind of the first painting of what would become like Amon and Valinor.
Exactly. So this is something that that I thought. It's again his use of, I keep saying this, I need to find another descriptor. It's just the worst because I can always say, oh, the colors are so amazing. But this first one that I found, and this is if you go onto the Tolkien Estate website and then you click onto Silmarillion, it's the first image in that like subgroup, and it's called The Shores of Fairy, and it was the earliest illustration of his secondary world, and he painted it when he was a student at Oxford. So he was already, I actually think that he was probably living in this world that he created probably most of his life. And then it started to come to the forefront as he matured and as he was able to communicate, whether it's with words or with art, what this world that this universe that, the three of us have been living in for probably most of our lives. But it's the city of the elves in Valinor, and it has two trees, very, I would say kind of abstract, very simple trees bearing the light of the moon and the sun. But what I think is interesting is if you look at the branches of both of the trees, it's almost like the sun and the moon are almost like fruit hanging from the trees, which
I can see it. Yeah.
Which is really fascinating because, of course, his understanding of mythos and the stories that we have, biblical stories, to have these the sun and the moon hanging like fruit from trees. To come up with that as a young man, I think is brilliant.
And that would definitely play in later in the Silmarillion, because of course when the trees are destroyed, it's their fruits that become the sun and the moon. So it's interesting that he's already kind of playing with that idea. And it's almost like in this picture, the trees are kind of framing, like it's like they're framing the world in a way, which is, maybe he's pulling that from like Yggdrasil, the world tree from, Norse mythology and mythos. In between,
and also no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying, and in between them is the city, which we know as, or we're assuming, or I think is Tirion upon Tuna, which is the greatest city of the elves within Aman, and of course we'll get a lot more of that. He that really gets fleshed out in the Silmarillion, with more on that city. But it's really like I said, it's not like a big, you can't go in and see a lot of detail of these amazing buildings and stuff that other artists have come in and painted or drawn, but it's a very simple, but it's very evocative of, like, it's almost like you're looking, from the city far off, like you would from the sea or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
And at this point, Tirion would have been called Kor in his very early writings, which is a name he lifted shamelessly from the city in the novel She. Which is like this ancient hidden city in the jungle or something, and he lifted that name shamelessly to use in his fairy tale universe, and then it became Kor Tirion, and then after a while he drops the Kor entirely and it's just Tirion upon Tuna.
Okay, well, but you know what, you got to start somewhere, right? I mean,
yeah. And I mean, whenever I try to write fiction, I lift names shamelessly from things and hope people won't notice. So
yeah, well, but if you do it and then you kind of, he uses it, but then he kind of added to it and then made it his own. And that's actually, again, what you can do as an artist and a writer. If you come up with something and you have no frame of reference for the people you're trying to communicate, whatever it is you're trying to communicate with them, whether it's visually or in writing, but like if you send somebody a letter from goblins and then you don't send them the key for 4 years later, for 4 years you're sitting there and you don't know what you're looking at. So it's okay. I would say it's okay to use that and then slowly make it your own. That's allowable. That's allowed. Yeah. And
then the next one I had in our outline was for the Silmarillion was the painting of the halls of Manwë, which depicts kind of, it's like 3 stories of a mountain. You have, starts in the ocean and you see a ship there, which looks like, what one of the Teleri ships would look like, a kind of bird-like with a swan, figurehead and a star, sail or star on the sail. And then, so you see kind of the first level of the mountains rising out of the water, but then the second level, and then, which is kind of even above the sun, where you see the sun and it's just kind of white and gray. And then the final, the peak of the mountain, which I can't remember the name of it offhand, the hill that, or the mountain that Manwë dwells upon. But it's a very much like, this is kind of like what, heaven potentially, what kind of the version of, God in heaven kind of would look like for this world, because of course, Eru Ilúvatar is kind of way above all this and above all creation, and you don't really have, like a heaven type of. We don't know a lot about what that looks like within Tolkien, but so this is kind of like the classic, like, great high heaven, high up above everything, above the, it's up in the stars almost. So I just thought this one was also really like it's really like the contrast is really interesting on this one. And this is also on the Tolkien site. It's the estate site. It's the one labeled the Halls of Manwë on the mountains of the world above Fairy. Taniquetil is the mountain. There you go.
Right. Very much like Mount Olympus. And you can see, what is it, on the right side, there's a very faint crescent moon. opposite where the sun is.
Oh, yeah.
I just caught it.
Yeah, I just see that. Well spotted. Well spotted. You know, I have to say, because Catherine and I talk about the sun and the moon all the time in sacred art. And it's really, and I don't think this was lost on Tolkien. It's just showing up way too much in his art. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's in his world, but I'm kind of thinking he probably understood what they meant in sacred art as well.
Right. Where the sun stands for Christ and the moon for the Blessed Mother. I mean, is like that's part, and it's also it's a sign of resurrection. It represents the Old Testament and the New Testament. So all kinds of things. It goes back a long, long way, and I love that he has started pulling this into his own universe. That's brilliant. That's just brilliant. What kills me is that later in life, he toyed with the idea of stripping the whole tree mythology out of the origin of the sun and moon entirely and just making it like, you know, more realistic. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that?
And thank goodness he didn't. Wow.
Right, yeah. It's great the way it is, you know.
Exactly. You know, because just like sometimes you have to know when to stop. Mm-hmm. Which is nice. Like, you know, sometimes if you're writing something, as you know, if you're a writer and you want to revise and you want to revise and you want to revise, or you're creating something like a visual art and you want to think, oh, I think I want to do this again. And no, I want to do this. It's nice to have somebody to just say, stop. I think you can stop now. Or maybe keep going. Like you can go, oh no, I'm finished. I can't work on this anymore. No, yes, you have to. You're not finished yet. And that's always nice to have that kind of voice. So maybe there was somebody there who said, that's the worst idea you've ever come up with.
It's very similar to when he had that idea to completely rewrite The Hobbit more in the style of The Lord of the Rings. And one of his early readers, who we don't know this person's identity, but apparently one of his early readers read the sample chapters and said, this is lovely, but it's not The Hobbit. And so he abandoned the project completely. So as an artist, a writer, you have to have those people who are going to push back on you and say, I don't know. It's like, we say in the Secrets of Star Wars, you know, sometimes George Lucas did not have those people.
No, he didn't.
And push back on you and say, I don't know, George. You know,
well, just to get our contractual reference in, the Peter Jackson movies were kind of the Hobbit movies were kind of the expanded, mature version. And so, you know, there we go.
And maybe it didn't work as well as. Yes, that's so funny. No, sometimes. Exactly. But that was well spotted. Yeah, it was beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Awesome. And then, you know, the next one I had on here was it's a painting of Glorund, which would become, of course, Glaurung, who in our Silmarillion read we've learned about, or you know, we're in the middle of reading about his you know, his kind of final appearance, the Glaurung, the dragon. But this one was interesting too, because it's you know, we were talking about it, and we just did a whole episode on dragons, but you know, we talked about Smaug, but Glaurung, how there are very different types of dragons. Glaurung is, you know, and this one he has legs, you know, and I think in the book he does as well, but whereas Smaug, of course, is a flying dragon, but Glaurung was, you know, kind of the worm type of, you know, ground dwelling dragon. So, but this one as well, like the colors here are, because he's not red like Smaug is, and we'll talk about Smaug here in a few minutes when we get to that part of this episode. But just the golden color with the green face is very, like, it's just a nice contrast to, like, because he's in the middle. This painting has him, and this is again on the Tolkien site, the estate site. He's in the river, but he has a green face, and you know, it's but the rest of the ground is kind of like ashy. I don't know if I'm assuming it's kind of ashy, and it looks like maybe trees have been destroyed. So
yes,
like,
or in the process of being destroyed. Yeah. Right. Different phases of it because of him.
Because you have some trees. Yeah, and now that I'm looking at it, you have it has the trees on the riverbank. Like some have like you have the green for the leaves, but then there's parts of them that are red, which I'm assuming is fire. And then like closest to him are trees that are looks like the leaves have all burned off. So it's showing how destructive Glaurung was in these chapters.
Yeah. Is this, looking at this, he kind of reminds me of like a larva, just the different segments of him. Yeah. And I just remember, it's like, how do dragons, form in their eggs, in an embryonic state, or are they kind of like insects where they are pupa and then they move on to these different stages? And I remember there was one time when Glaurung, as a young dragon, came running out when he shouldn't have, and he had to be drawn back. And I just wonder, here he is. He doesn't look fully formed like a dragon, does he?
No, I noticed the segments where he looks like an earthworm. Yeah. So he doesn't look like fully formed, and also his face is green. Like, so maybe that part of him is a little more mature than the rest. Or how you have bugs? They're larvae and of different insects that you would like if you have a reptile. You'd feed them to your reptile, and the heads they're usually darker, and they have the little mandibles. Yeah. But then then you have like the soft white body of the larvae, and it's a sign of not being fully mature. And he might not have had that in mind, but that's definitely how this dragon looks, like not a fully mature dragon. And what does it say? Glaurung races forth? Is that what it is? But it sets forth. Yeah. And I just wonder, when did this happen? Was this when he was the younger dragon, not quite ready? And maybe
sets. Yeah. Well, in this it says sets forth to seek Turin, but the Silmarillion was still in the process of being written out, so.
Yeah,
it's probably kind of some of both. They're probably around the Dagor Bragollach, which is when he came out immature, and then the Nirnaeth or Nordiad is the bigger battle where he kind of came out and was more kind of fully mature, and then after that is when he and Turin had their final battle. But this one's also interesting because I didn't really catch this before, but it shows that the dragon is coming off the page, or coming off, not off the page, but off the border of the painting.
Yeah.
Here too. So it's like we did the whole episode on dragons, but that was definitely like dragons were kind of the biggest mythological, creature that was kind of at least in the, the Western world, dragons were kind of the biggest creature that you would encounter in the various myths and such. So it's showing how dangerous they might have been if they had existed. But
yeah, and that's a good observation, Jeff, because of course
I wrote it off the page. I'm not.
Oh, okay. No, I was going to say, but with him coming out of the picture itself, it's almost like he's threatening to you. He's not just a threat into his little world that you think you're safe, but he's actually coming out of that world and after you as well. So that's really neat. And you do see that. I think the Flemish artists, or I should call them the Flemish primitives, which if you look at their art, you're like, how are you calling this primitive? But anyway, sometimes you get portraits of people and their hands will be lightly placed over the frame. So it's painted over the frame of the painting. So it's like they're kind of leaning out. It's very clever. And he's done that with this dragon.
He's literally breaking the fourth wall, essentially.
Exactly. Thank you. That's why I couldn't come up. I knew there was a term that I couldn't find in my head. But yes, thank you, Thomas.
Yeah. And then those are kind of the main paintings we had to talk about. But we had some notes on the coat of arms and the Tingwar script. That kind of came out of this story, because of course, I don't know the development of the story versus the writing, coming up with the Tingwar script, but I believe the Tingwar script is in the Silmarillion is how it was actually developed within the world of the Legendarium. The Tengwar script was developed by the elves, I believe by Feanor, if I'm not mistaken, or was it by just I don't know if you know offhand, Thomas, if the Tengwar
I think Feanor developed the Tengwar letters. Yeah.
Okay. Which of course we see throughout the rest of the Legendarium in the Lord of the Rings as well. So yeah, did y'all have anything on the coat of arms of the different elf houses, or
the heraldic devices from the Silmarillion are in this book that I have pictures by J.R.R. Tolkien, and they're beautiful. So I'll say that. And I love how different they are. They are not like traditional European heraldic devices that I've seen.
Yeah.
They are very, very different, like, which makes sense because the elves, like, they're not even a human culture. They're a completely different culture. There seems to be like two different shapes, either circles or diamond shapes, or, kind of squares tilted on their sides here. But within those, he manages to create like an amazing variety of patterns. The only one which really in any way resembles a kind of European one is Finrod's, because there's something recognizable in it. There's a harp and a torch, and but besides that, like, you can see like they're more abstract sun shapes, more abstract flowers or trees, but like it's not immediately recognizable what the things are supposed to represent. And I love that is able to communicate the ethereal otherworldliness of the elves, that even their symbology is completely different from like standard human medieval heraldic conventions. Yeah.
And if I could just say something about the technique that he clearly used in creating these heraldries is the use of a compass, a really, really confident use of a compass. So if you look at the Luthien herald, it's a circle made with a compass with a dot in the middle, and then what you would do is you would set the point of the compass halfway between the center of the circle you've already made, and then you draw another one, so you get that half circle, and you do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and that's how you get those 4 different sections. Do you see what I mean? And then within that, he can draw just very simple lines and to create these beautiful lilies. And he's done that with all of them. He's used some kind of a compass is evident in all of them at some point. And so I think by doing that, even though, as you say, Thomas, it doesn't really resemble like a human heraldry, but by using that compass and that diamond shape, he's made it consistent within the elven culture. So there is a consistency within its own universe, if that makes any sense. With maybe, as you say, with Finrod's, it's totally different, but it works because when you think about who Finrod was in relation to the other elves, maybe that's why his looks very different.
And he's closest to men in terms of
exactly.
he met the first men who entered Beleriand, and he was always considered a friend of the human race.
Exactly. So his stands out from so he kind of is, 1 foot in this elven, in the race of elves, and 1 foot in the race of men with his heraldry. So it's very, again, I don't know if this is something that Tolkien did on a conscious level, or if, sometimes in writing, and if you're doing something, painting, or like I do embroidery, and there's a point where you become, I guess you have a certain degree of competency. You trust the medium enough to kind of let it do its thing. Do you know what I mean? You just kind of let it go, and you just write, or you just So, and that is something where, so he clearly, he was a master of words, and he's showing here, he's not, he's a master of this universe that he's creating. Yeah. Because this is something. Yeah.
I was gonna say, to go back a minute, the Luthien Herald is on the Tolkien site. It's the second. I think it's the second one from the bottom under the Silmarillion page on the painting. Or at least it's one version of it. So the Finrod one, I was trying to look up because that one is not on there. But I can't talk enough about Finrod because he's one of my favorite characters. Definitely one of my favorite elves. But yeah, that's interesting that his herald would be, or his symbol would be, incorporate a little bit more, mannish type of things, because he had, that deeper connection or closer connection to man than, other elves did at the time. So, because like you said, he was the first one to find them, and, really became a friend to men and had a really close connection to the House of Beor and House of Bar here, and who'd become the house that Aragorn is a part of, and Arwen. So
yeah.
Awesome. And there's also on the Tolkien site as well for the heraldry. There's one for Earendil, and because of course Earendil is bearing the final Silmaril. In an eternal, in his flying ship across the stars, he's he's kind of the North Star of the elves, and is bearing it across the cosmos. And that one is really it does really evoke a star, because it's a black diamond and then a blue circle, and then a star, and what's meant to be the Silmarillion within that. So
and I would
on the Tolkien site.
Yeah, and if you look at that one, even the blue, so it's almost like a cornflower blue or sapphire blue circle with smaller circles around a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-pointed star. But the larger blue almost looks like a Silmaril as well. So it's like it's almost like a repetitive thing that he's done. It's quite, and again, you can see he's used watercolor for most of this, but the inside where it's the Silmaril, it looks like he's just used like a colored pencil or crayon.
Yeah.
And pencil. You can see the leaded pencil, like a hard leaded pencil for the inner circle, just to get that kind of hardness of the jewel. Or the gem. It's very cool.
And then we haven't really touched on the maps yet, but this might be a good time to touch on the maps, which of course are a big part of The Hobbit, because of course Bilbo, that's one thing that gets him interested in the adventure is he loves maps, even though he loves his Hobbit hole, he loves maps. But the maps of this Silmarillion are really interesting, because of course we've joked that there's the whole chapter that is the map chapter of the Silmarillion, but if you really look at the map, and there's, I think it's double check, I think it's Loter Project, so LOTR project.com is an interactive map of the well, maybe not, I don't know, or at least it used to be kind of an interactive map that you could it's based on Tolkien's map, but you could kind of pull up and see where everything is, and based on the certain events and times. But his maps that are that he drew are really interesting, and really I've seen maps, modern day maps, where you take your home state or your home country, and it kind of, you can get it Tolkienified, and those are really cool. So it's just a very,
really?
I mean, that is it is a Tolkien, you look at these maps, any of his maps, and you're like, oh, that's a Tolkien map, because they're just very distinctive.
Mm-hmm. I think that's Lord of Maps on Lord of Maps website. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So I don't know if y'all had anything specific about maps. I think Thomas, you got that map kit, the stamp kit. I don't know if
from Lord of Maps, so that you don't have to individually putting yourself every little mountain and every little tree in the map. There's some standardized stamps that help you create. I'll show you this guy more later after we're done recording, but I've been working on some maps.
Oh, wow.
With because I got that map kit for Christmas, but I just started working with it. And it's been a lot of fun. I love maps. I'm like Bilbo. I love maps. One thing I'll mention that's a neat trivia about the map of Thror that's reproduced in The Hobbit is that originally there was supposed to be sort of like invisible letters that you could make appear just like what happens in the story with the moon runes that hide the secret instructions to get into the mountain. Mm-hmm. And there was supposed to be, like, I think in the original editions in The Hobbit, like a way to make those appear on the page. I don't know if you shone a light behind it, or it was something like that. But in later editions, they just print the secret runes.
Yeah, I think because it was too expensive to do. Yeah, and with a children's books, how much do you want to spend on that? I had read about that.
Ask my publisher. They went all out with my children's book using insanely materials. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say now, of course, this is where they have the ability to do it, but maybe back then and maybe they didn't have the vision. But I was thinking, and I don't know, I haven't used American money for a while, so I don't know if you have a water print on it anymore. But here, so you can hold up like a 20-pound note, and you can see a really clear watermark in the pound note itself. And I was just thinking, do you know what they should start including that in future publications of The Hobbit. They can do it. They could do it today. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't cost nearly as much as it was costing them, in 1937 or whatever the date was when The Hobbit came out. So I think, and to be fair, there was a war going on.
There was about to be. Yeah, they're like,
so
we could spend this much money on
exactly. You kind of give them a little bit of some slack. But I have to, if I could say this about the maps, I believe that because I think there's a direct relationship between how well the world building was in Middle Earth and the details of these maps. And I don't know which came first. I would think the way I would have to do it, I'd have to have the map first.
He did that. Right. In the letters, somewhere in the letters, Tolkien says, I wisely started with a map. Because he said it would be very difficult, and it is, because I've tried to reverse engineer a map from a story you've already written.
Yeah. So is that how? So now that you have your little map kit, stamp kit, is that what you're doing? Is it helping?
That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Very cool.
I need to figure out where people are going and where everything is in relation to each other. Like I do it very simple. Like the one I was working on just as a simple north-south axis. But even that is enough to, provide a lot of possibilities. I mean, where I live on the East Coast of the United States is a north-south axis, and there's tons of stuff going on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's like, but once you have a map, it's much easier to just say, okay, it's going to take them much longer to go between these 2 points than between these 2 points. And then you save yourself a lot of rewriting later, trying to look for plot errors and inconsistencies.
Yeah. But again, for somebody for the reader, it really strengthens. It's a foundation for your world building. I think maps are absolutely essential. And when I used to read Lord of the Rings out to my children every year, and The Hobbit every single year, songs included,
Yeah.
Nothing abridged. We had at one point in the classroom a map of Middle Earth, and so we would track. Yeah, so we tracked Bilbo and the fellow and the company, their journey, and then we also had Frodo and Sam, and then we had the three hunters. We had it all mapped out on this map. Awesome. And it was so great because you could see it. Yeah. And then do you know what? Knowing me, it's probably somewhere in this house still. So I might find it, get it framed. Look at this.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can move on to The Hobbit and talk about some art here. So I think the first one we had, I think you mentioned, Alex, which is the Misty Mountains painting. Is that the one we were referring to earlier? It's actually not under the Hobbit section, under the Tolkien Gateway or the Tolkien Estate. But if you go to the painting page, it's right there. Is that the one you were referring to?
No, mine is the. Well, let's see. Mine is the. I'm thinking about the jacket cover, the dust jacket. That features the Misty Mountains. It's the first dust jacket for The Hobbit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's kind of green, red, blackish blue kind of colors.
Oh, maybe that's not the one I'm thinking of. Wait a minute. Oh. Let me see. I'm going to see if I can find it.
There's been so many versions of the...
Well, the one that I have is what I love about it. Yeah. So the one that I'm looking at it's from the original, and it's the Misty Mountains, and the colors are green, white, black, and blue.
Yeah, I think.
And they're okay. I love those colors. And do you want to know something? And I think a sign of a true artist is that he is to inspire other people with your art, to create art. And I kind of always like to have like secret Middle Earth stuff that I wear, that I make, that I wear. And I found a cardigan pattern that I think I can combine all of these colors. So it would be like this secret, like you would only know that the colors are, that it's my Bilbo Baggins cardigan, if you know Bilbo Baggins. Do you know what I mean? But the only problem is this cardigan pattern is in Japanese, so I'm going to have to figure out what to do. But I'll figure it out. I'm so motivated by Tolkien that I'm going to figure this out to do it. And and it's one of my favorite. I love that color combination, and I love that dust jacket. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. I don't have. It's not on the Tolkien Gateway site.
No, it's not. It's not the Tolkien strangely,
but it's the really the contrast between you have the green forest for Markwood, and then leading all straight into these black and blue mountains, which they call, I believe the Blue Mountains is what they're calling them, and then of course you have Erebor, the lonely mountain off by itself. That's kind of the taller one, and you have. Yeah, and you have the moon because going back to the moon because that's how they see I believe that's how they see the door, right, Thomas? They have to the light of the moon of Durin's Day, if I'm not mistaken.
It's when the sun and the moon are in the sky at the same time. At the end of autumn or something like that, and there's
on Durin's Day,
the last sunbeam kind of hits the wall of the mountain and reveals the keyhole.
And one of the things, if I could just point out, what I think is one of the things I love about this, again, is this use of negative space. So if you look at the trees, you could do like the trees could all be just if he separated each tree with white, not with black. And that completely changes the look. And if he hadn't separated them, they would just be like blobs, But he's done it this way. And I just think that's It's genius. And the same thing with the mountains. Look how he's used white to separate the colors and the shapes instead of using black. You know, so he's painting. So that really is a mastery of the paintbrush, I think. And especially this is all watercolor, and it's beautiful. That he clearly loved that blue.
Yeah, and that would have really been like if you saw that in a bookstore, you know, that jacket, that would have been really striking, and really, you know, would have been like caught your eye. And this was a time when there wasn't like all as much, like, it's not like the 70s era fantasy art and beyond, which, you know, has big epic scenes. It's really just like the very simple kind
There's
of.
no Frank Frazetta yet to those epic battle scenes on the cover of your fantasy novel.
Exactly. And you know what? I just see you've just inspired me even more to figure out this cardigan pattern, Jeff, because you said this dust jacket, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm going to make a jacket with these colors. I'll be wearing the Hobbit jacket as a jacket.
Once you make it, definitely put it on the Discord so everyone can see.
Yeah, it'll be a while because I'm trying to figure out the Japanese. I don't know how I'm gonna figure that out.
Yeah. All right. So then there's another one here that I have, which this is on the Tolkien paintings, Tolkien estate painting section under the Hobbit. So it's the hill, the Hobbiton across the water, and it says that it was first black and white in the first edition, but in the first American edition, he actually painted, and it included a watercolor version. And it's a really like, I mean, it just really evokes like what we know as the Shire. Because I mean, this generation, the Shire is like the Jackson, you know, the Peter Jackson Shire. Like you know, like I hear the music in my head, and I just immediately transported to the Shire. And you know, but it's just, you have the green rolling hills, you have just the, you know, the cottages, the small buildings, and it's like very kind of peaceful, which I know it's based on kind of the English countryside. And yeah, this one, I don't know if y'all have any specific thoughts on this painting here. That's like I just want to go there. Like I want to.
Yeah, it's one of those paintings I wish I could just step into and like be inside the painting, you know.
Kind of like Eustace did in Narnia, and it was at the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. They actually did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, it really, it's beautiful. And again, now here he uses a lot more colors, but I have to say this to give credit to Peter Jackson. He must have paid attention to these illustrations, because it's not that Peter Jackson, maybe we're not thinking of Peter Jackson's Hobbit and Shire, you know, the Shire, but he's paid his respects to this. You know, I'm just thinking about like walking up Bag End, you know, how the little houses, kind of the row houses going up to Bag End, you can kind of see that in the distance. But I don't see the green dragon here. I was expecting to see the green dragon.
No, you see the mill.
We don't really hear about the green dragon in the Hobbit though, so maybe it didn't exist yet. I don't think it was in the Hobbit.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Bywater, I think. The next town over is where the Green Dragon actually is located.
Oh, okay. There's
a mill and the Grange there and a few other things.
Yes, and you can see where there's a signpost, and it says, one says west and one says hill.
Hill, yeah.
Like,
and I love how at the bottom it has that kind of English place naming convention, Hobbiton across the water.
Yeah.
With all the words, you know, there's a dash between all the words.
Stratford upon Avon.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. There was one that I wish Lizard under Supermare. That's one.
What the?
I've been to Lizard under Supermare. It's not that exciting. Yeah.
We have a town called Cut and Shoot here in Texas. So.
That's a very Texas name for a town.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of interesting names. I guess anywhere you go.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we can get to Lord of the Rings. Let's we can keep moving here. So the other big one that I think is kind of really well known is the Conversation with Smaug, which is on the Tolkien estate site. It's like the cover page of the Hobbit section of the paintings, and it shows Smaug, on his mound of gold within the mountain, and yeah, it's just a very just very colorful, it jumps off the page. I mean, you have the contrast of the red of Smaug with the gold and jewels and such, and then the gray halls, and then it looks like the ash and bones of.
I know.
Oh my!
It's quite gruesome. It's quite gruesome.
I hadn't noticed that before until I was just now looking at it. But yeah, this one I think this one's probably one of the most well known, just because I know I've seen this before. When I've looked at other art, but it's this is like. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think this one. So we have my husband's original Hobbit, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings from when he was a little boy. Wow. And I think and it was a paperback. And I think this was the front cover of his paperback.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was, all those years ago that he had that one. And, one of the things, if we could, if either one of you had anything else you wanted to say about this, there were two other images from The Hobbit.
I just wanted to point out the neat way that he communicates that Bilbo is invisible by having Bilbo be completely in black, surrounded by this little cloud.
Yes,
and that is supposed to communicate to to whoever's looking at the painting that Smaug cannot see Bilbo.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is, because how do you draw somebody who's invisible?
How do you draw an invisible character?
Yeah. Well, do you know how when in Wonder Woman, she would have her invisible car?
Yeah.
It was just like white lines, which was weird because she wasn't invisible. And anyway, that's another story. I'm not gonna delve too deeply. I used to wonder that as a child, but wait, she would just look like she's sitting. Is she just sitting and moving down the road or through the sky? But
don't ask questions.
Exactly. But the two paintings that I wanted to point out from The Hobbit is the one where Bilbo, after the eagles have taken them and he's woken up the next day. That is so beautiful. That image of the eagle. He looks like a sea eagle or a golden eagle. So this comes from a real life observation of this animal. I don't know if he went to maybe a museum and saw a taxidermied specimen, or if he traveled enough around the country. I mean, these kinds of things you see in Scotland. You don't see them in the south of England, I don't think. But I know there is sea eagles, and they're massive. They're about twice the size of a bald eagle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when he's talking about these massive eagles that were picking up people and flying off with them, the ones that he would have possibly been exposed to if he ever went to Scandinavia or up in Scotland, they're huge. And they can take lambs. They're known for swooping down and grabbing lambs and taking them off. So maybe that's a little bit of the inspiration. But I just think this is such a beautiful rendering of an animal that looks like very much. It's almost like a naturalist observation, rendering of a specimen. But in the lower left hand corner, you can see Bilbo with just the sun on his face, lying there, and the beautiful mountains in the background. He really knew mountains. He had to have been exposed to mountains, like actual mountains, in his lifetime, because you can't just draw that sort of thing. That and trees, I have to say, he was a master at drawing trees. And I don't think we have any examples of those, but they are definitely on the website, and they're worth looking at. And trees are not easy to draw. If you've ever tried to draw
Old Man Willow is really, really good. It's almost realistic in terms of how he draws this willow tree. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not an easy thing to draw. But and then the last one that I wanted to point out from The Hobbit, because I know Jeff, we were kind of like, what are we going to talk about? And look at us, we're not even out of The Hobbit yet. We haven't even. But if you look at the hall at Bag End residence of B. Baggins Esquire.
Wait, doesn't that mean he's a lawyer to have Esquire on your name? What?
I think yes, because my brother-in-law is an Esquire, but I think it can also mean like you're just a gentleman, like you're a little bit of a landed gentry kind of thing, but not too fancy. You don't have a manor home, but you're just a little, catch a nice garden.
It's just in the U.S. it means you're a lawyer.
Yeah. Not quite as romantic. But I was looking at Bilbo, and then I looked at a photograph of Tolkien. And I think there was a little bit of an inspiration there, maybe looking in the mirror while he was drawing Bilbo. What do you think?
Yeah, probably so.
I've always thought there must be a connection between Tolkien himself and Bilbo. Yeah.
But if you take a look at the two, because in the slide that I put together, that I had just to keep track of the images I wanted to talk about, when I looked at this one of Bilbo and at Bag End, and then I thought, oh my gosh, that looks like Tolkien, and so then I found a picture
him in profile. Yeah.
I think he wanted to be a hobbit.
Oh yeah.
Who doesn't want to be a hobbit? Honestly,
I know.
So just because we're because we have the last part of the Legendarium to talk about, and I want to give it its due. So I think we can move on to the Lord of the Rings, and I just pulled a couple things here. I think the first one I thought was just kind of interesting. It was the sketch of Sauron. And this is again on the Tolkien estate site. I just thought that was really interesting because he's not really described as a character much in the books, or at least in Lord of the Rings. He's just kind of the overarching evil force, but he's not really you don't really get to know Sauron as a character until Rings of Power. So but I just thought that was a really interesting depiction because again, going off, this is I think what Peter Jackson did was really good with Sauron, was how he made him big and armored and menacing like that, but it's it looks like he pulled from this kind of original sketch idea here.
I think this moment is supposed to be right after the destruction of the One Ring, where that big Sauron-shaped cloud looms over the armies of the West, and the cloud sort of outstretches a hand, and then a wind comes off the sea and blows it away.
Okay.
Because it looks very cloud-like,
Yeah, and also he looks, the way the hand is sort of, that pincher gesture that he's making with his index finger and thumb, almost like reaching out for the ring. Like that's what you're reaching out to take something precious, and it disappears. It's gone.
I just realized too, especially the hand and arm, it reminds me of Chernabog from Fantasia.
Oh yeah,
the big cloud mountain demon thing from the Night on Bald Mountain segment of Fantasia. And I know Tolkien was not really a fan of the Disney movies, but just the way this character is drawn reminds me of that.
Yeah. No, it's and he's like stretched as well. He's like coming out of he's not like a solid form. The way he's painted it, he's stretching across the page, as if he's starting to dissipate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then next on here, and these are from the Tolkien estate site, but he kind of sketched out the cover of Lord of the Rings. And actually that's most of what I have here is his covers. But the first one I thought was interesting. It's the black cover with the Fellowship of the Ring title, and then it has it has the eye surrounded by the One Ring, and then of course the black script, the black speech that's inscripted into the ring. And then what I thought was interesting is you have the three elven rings here. Kind of showing how they're kind of a check or a kind of a wall against Sauron, because of course you have Gandalf wearing his ring, you have Elrond and Galadriel all wearing their rings, and they're all kind of standing against Sauron in various ways. So I just thought this was this really evokes something like evil and really something like dark and mysterious with this cover. And this isn't what was used, I don't think, but it was not chosen by the publisher, but I thought this one was really cool.
Yeah, I like that one. I don't know why they wouldn't use it. And do you know what else? And it could just be a little bit of a mistake because it's an older piece. But if you look up on the left, the top left-hand corner, it looks like there are two little red eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that's a mistake or on purpose.
I don't know.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe.
Like he's Sauron looking,
Yeah.
And from
or
what
maybe
I understand,
Melkor.
Oh, yeah, out in the outer darkness.
Yeah.
From what I understand, where, you see like the tail ends of the black speech script where they sort of turn into these tongues of flame. And the ring that they're sort of rising up towards is actually supposed to be Narya, the ring that Gandalf wielded.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they're both Maiar.
Right, and he was like the principal opponent of Sauron.
Yeah, and also and he was like the master of fire.
Yes, yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Gandalf is a servant of the secret fire.
Yeah.
There you go. See, look at it. He was a genius with his illustrations. We drawing all the. Do you know what? I'm just thinking. This is something why it's so important to understand the story behind the visual stuff. Of course, going back to, sacred art, we kind of try to show this is the tradition, this is the culture, these are the stories behind what you're looking at. And because you two, you are much more familiar with Middle Earth than I am, although I'm pretty darn familiar with Middle Earth. I still have to set my sat nav to get from point A to point B, but you could probably just look at the stars and find your way. But
no, I need my GPS, my smartphone.
Okay, you too. but because we all are so familiar with Middle Earth, looking at this work, we can draw so much out of it. It's nice to look at on one level, but when you know the story behind it, you get so much more out of it. All the more reasons to just reread them again.
Yeah. Oh, darn. The other art from the Fellowship that I thought we should, I kind of skipped this initially, but if we should go back and mention is that there are kind of two art kind of pieces. One was in the book and one was not. So the first one I think that bears mentioning is the Doors of Durin, which Tolkien did actually sketch out and draw. And you see these in they aren't on the Tolkien site, so I'll include a link to the Tolkien Gateway page of the Doors of Durin. But if you've read the book, you've seen this, and then of course they're in the movies as well. But it's just kind of a sketch of the door that has the Feanorian script, the Tengwar script, and it's an arch with has trees kind of elements to it, and then it's just like that just kind of gives you and of course that's was what was inspired Peter Jackson in the actual movie. So I don't know if y'all had anything to say about that about this one, but it really does evoke like a really mysterious and cool door.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, looking on, I guess we keep telling people to go to the Tolkien Estate website. There's so much there. And if you go to the paintings and then you go to real life paintings and sketches, you will see he drew the Lambourne, Berkshire west door of church, and he drew that in 1912 at the end of his first year of university. And it is the archway of a church that, if you look at the chevron shapes on it, it's probably a Benedictine church or abbey. But if you look at that sketch and then you look at the doors to Moria, you go, oh, okay. That's where that came from. And I knew that he had been inspired by like a real life door, but I didn't know which church it was. But and I think there's another door, famous doors that have two big ancient holly trees on either side of it. So it might have been a combination of those two. But no, it's a beautiful, I kind of, it's one of these things where you just wish you could put that someplace in your house, but it's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, with smart doors now, or smart technology now, and lights, you could probably set up a door that would open by itself if you speak and light up and speak the code word. And if I ever,
yeah,
if I ever win the lottery and enough money, I'll definitely do that. So
there you go. But everybody who knows you would know that the speak friend and enter, right. They would know which word to use.
Yeah. Maybe that'll just send me it'll be like my Ring doorbell. If someone rings my video doorbell and I don't know who they are, I'm not going to pick up because. All right. And then the other part of art that I thought bore mentioning was the this is not in the book, or the art of it is not in the book, but it's the Book of Mazarbul, which is the dwarven book that is what they find in the halls of Khazad-dûm. And it's kind of the it's covered in, has dwarven runes. It's kind of a chronicle of the history of Balin, who from the Hobbit made his way to Moria to set up a colony there, and of course they woke up the Balrog and I don't know if they woke up the Balrog, but were attacked there and were killed off, unfortunately. And you see this in the movie, and Tolkien did actually draw this book.
Yeah.
And I have a link on here to the Tolkien Gateway for this, but it's just kind of a cool idea of including in the book. And his publishers, I don't think wanted, they probably were like, we want to sell, we don't want to waste page space on dwarven runes, so they didn't include it. But
yeah, again, it would have been insanely expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
But but it would be very cool. So it's just it's just kind of like burned pages with covered in dwarven runes and
blood.
Yeah.
I mean, it's supposed to be like a horrible thing. They're supposed to be horrified by what they're seeing. And
right.
I got to see these at the Bodleian. These were on display.
Okay.
They weren't that big. They were smaller than I thought they would be. And they were less, the colors were a lot brighter than they have. I think there's been a little bit of manipulation maybe in taking photographs of them and then putting them online, because they didn't quite, and here I am. This is not I'm not criticizing him because I could do better. I literally could not do better. But I love how he used his pipe. You could just see him really working on this to try to make it look old and burnt. And that's what I love about it, because you can tell the effort that he put into this to make it look, to try to get across to people the horror that they would be witnessing of almost like the Viking raids of, I'm sure people would come across manuscripts and things from raids. He probably saw a lot of things like this when he was in World War I, destruction of texts and things, and maybe bringing that back. So
right. Or the Nazi book bonfires in the years leading to World War II.
Exactly. So it was so I do remember seeing them, but these were probably the size of, if I remember correctly, maybe the size of a medium-sized paperback.
Oh, so like a trade paperback.
Yeah. Not very big.
All right. Well, yeah, we just have a couple more here, so we can go ahead and move on to the two towers. The only one I pulled for the two towers was the his dust jacket design, and it shows a contrast of, you have kind of a white tower and a dark tower. And I thought the caption here on the Tolkien estate side was funny, is that as Tolkien worked on the design, he realized he would have to decide which two towers the title referred to. So he didn't
know.
He didn't know, apparently, up until he was doing the art. Because of course there's a lot of towers in the books. There's the Tower of Barad-dûr,
Amanhu, yeah.
There's the Tower of Cirith Ungol and the Tower of Minas Tirith, which I believe the towers are referring to Cirith Ungol and Orthanc, if I'm not mistaken, in the two towers. But you have because of course you have the white hand, which is showing, you have a black tower with the white hand, which is depicting Sauron, and then you have in this one the white tower with the moon, which I believe is depicting Cirith Ungol.
Right, or Minas Morgul.
Or
because that's the Tower of the Moon.
Yeah. Which okay.
Yeah, and I get those mixed up, because in the movie the Minas Morgul stuff is in Return of the King, but in the book it's
in the book.
In the books it's more the, so when I saw this I was like, wait, why is Minas Morgul there? But and
in the movie they make it explicit that at least in the Jackson verse the two towers refer to Barad-dûr and Orthanc. Yeah. They call it the union of the two towers, which I thought was a neat addition, like, to what, Sauron and Saruman's alliance of convenience. Like, they gave it like an official name, like the union of the two towers.
Yeah, and it also gives like almost the Pincher effect of when they were trying to, all the battles and everything that they were having.
Yeah, they were
between the two towers,
trying to squeeze Rohan to destroy Rohan, so that they could then take out Gondor. And once they took out Gondor, they'd control everything. So, but yeah, this one I think is kind of cool too. And it has kind of I don't know if it's supposed to be a bird flying across there in the middle, or if it's one of the fell beasts or something.
I think it was a fell beast.
Yeah,
it was a fell beast.
Yeah,
probably so. But
it was very pterodactyl-like.
Yeah. Because I think the tail is like that swallow. It's like got a short swallow tail.
Yeah,
and the wings are kind of coming forward, not the other way around, like they're in the back. And I'm just looking, because if you see the feet are pointing towards the long neck part, and it's got like a beak and maybe like a sharp ear or something. Yeah, so it's just a very.
I was looking at it in reverse. Yeah. Then I was kind of looking at it like this.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah,
like it was flying to the
pointing toward Orthanc, but
yes. Yeah, because you can see the eye and everything. Yeah, but the wings are kind of strange. So it's almost like it's this animal that's really weird. Like, it's not good. If you saw that in the sky. Yes.
All right. And then the last image that we have on here, or that I put on here, is his design for the jacket of Return of the King, which again, this goes back to has a mostly black, darker color scheme. I mean, it's mostly black with a little bit of red, and then you have the white tree with stars. And then what I thought was really cool is you have, because I love Aragorn and Elendil, and I love all the high men of the West stuff. So this is really depicting it shows the empty throne of Gondor, and then it has the oath of Elendil in the Tingwar script, which the oath or part of the oath, I don't think it has the full thing.
Oh, is that what those letters are?
Yeah, it says it's the text. In this place will I abide, and my heirs unto the ending of the world.
Great. Yeah.
So
wow, love it.
And it has and you can see it has the green. I think it's the ring of Bar here, right above on this one of where it says of the king. I think that's the ring of Bar here, or
right, because of the green stone and the snake skin pattern,
right,
on the ring.
Yeah. Well, and also if you look up at the top to the left, you can see again. We had that one watercolor sketch of Sauron stretching his arms out, stretching his hand out. If you look within like the there's like highlighted in red, you can see his eye
Yeah.
And the crown, and his hand is reaching across over the tree. Do you see that?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That is cool.
I know. Why didn't they use this?
Yeah, I'd never seen that before. I've seen this used as a cover for the trade paperback, but they completely in that version, it's just on a matte black background, and you don't have that Sauron image in the corner.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen it. We get stuff in, Tolkien stuff in all the time at the shop. And, and I do post on Discord if there's anything amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're so lucky to be.
I have to say, it is kind of, it's a dangerous job. I always say it's really not, if you like books and you like Tolkien, it's really not where you want to work. Yeah. If you actually want to make money. Exactly.
Well, before we kind of conclude, the last thing was just, did y'all have any resources or other books or things to check out? I mean, and we'll include the links to the show notes for what we've been going off of here. But Thomas, what was the book that you have? It's The Art of Tolkien.
It's called Pictures by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Pictures by.
I think I put a link to it somewhere in your document.
Okay.
Jeff.
Okay. And is that the one that was published by Harper's Press?
Maybe originally. What does it say on it now? Whatever. I think it is. I don't recognize this publisher's logo. It might be some imprint. I know they were hand selected by Christopher. All the paintings in here.
Nice.
So yeah, and you can get it really inexpensively on Amazon for like less than $20.
Yeah,
it's
it looks like
really good value. Yeah.
Okay.
And it comes with a slipcase, which is just great.
There you go. All right. Any other resources from you, Alex, or anything else you want to include for the listeners for?
Yeah, I can't think of anything, but what I would say is, if people would be interested in us going even more into details about it, we could talk about this the whole time, and we could talk about this clearly for a long time, and maybe we could do something next time with slides and videos, and then people can just enjoy that as well. If we kind of do a collab with Secrets of Sacred Art, and maybe get Catherine in here to talk about technique and medium and how things are constructed, because she's always got an eye. She can find things that other people can't. So
yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, definitely that would be cool to do. So all right, well, I think that is it for this episode of the Secrets of Middle Earth. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make this show possible, including Joanne S., Steve N., Iris V., Sean B., and Gretchen L. Their generous donations help us to continue to create the Secrets of Middle Earth and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them at sqpn.com/give. Now, we'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What do you think about the art of Tolkien? You can let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter, or by sending an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, by leaving us a comment on YouTube, or by visiting our channel on the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. So join us next time for another episode discussing the wonderful world of Middle Earth. And until then, thank you, Thomas, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle Earth.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This was great.
And Alix Murray, thank you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, gentlemen. It was fun.
Of course, happy to have your expertise. And I'm Jeff Haecker. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Middle Earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. Let's Science. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/science.